Welcome back everybody to Jay Hunto's Garage. Today I'm going to show you how to change a water pump on one of these Ecotec engines, 2.2 or 2.4 liter, with an added benefit of having the engine out of the car.
Look out!
If you've got a Haynes manual on your HHR, your Cobalt, whatever for your 2.2 or 2.4 liter Ecotec, just know that the water pump does not look like this. This is a conventional style that's on the outside front of the engine usually. If the water pump shaft bearings fail, there may be a howling sound at the pump while it's running. That can definitely be the case, but there's no way to check that without taking it off. All water pumps, in rare cases on high mileage vehicles, another sign of water pump failure may be the presence of coolant in the engine oil. That could happen because this is where your water pump starts. This is where your water pump housing is. This is engine oil all through here that lubricates the chain. So there's a seal that separates these two. So if that goes bad, you're either going to get oil in your water or water in the oil. Chapter 3, Section 8 is your water pump replacement. You will need a special tool to keep this in place. I've done it without that. Going to see if I can do it again without it. Otherwise, I'll have to improvise to keep the sprocket in time with the timing chain, because this is chain driven. So you'll want to make sure that that stays in place. So here's your warnings you got to start with. The engine must be completely cool before beginning this procedure. Then disconnect your battery cable, and then it tells you everything to take off. You got to remove the front wheel on the passenger side. Remove the plug. You drain the coolant. Remove the plug from the bottom of the water pump housing. That is this right here, which you will see from getting under the car. You're going to have a connection point here where the transmission bolts up, and there's something else that bolts on here and I can't really recall what it is, but it's fairly easy to get to this. It's a 13 millimeter. Take that bolt out, it'll drain the coolant out of here. There's a coolant transfer tube that goes back this way to the thermostat housing. So that's just sealed in there with O-rings, and you'll have to loosen your thermostat housing to get enough room to move this and get it removed. Now this book tells you to remove a lot of things off the engine before you can get this water pump off, like the exhaust heat shield, electrical connector at the engine coolant temp, remove the catalytic converter. I don't think you need to do all that. 3 bolts securing the thermostat housing. You will have to do that just to get the coolant transfer tube out. Specials. Okay, here's a special holding tool, part number EN43651, available from specialty tool manufacturers. Tool can be fabricated if necessary. Lock the tool carefully, not allowing any sprocket movement. The bolts. This is just to keep the gear from jumping a tooth on the chain. That occurs behind this plate. Alright, so with the plate removed, you can see the locking tool will get bolted into these 2 holes and then bolt into the sprocket to keep it stationary while you remove the water pump. Then you're going to take out this bolt and this bolt, which are both 13 millimeter. All the other bolts are on the back side. This one, and that should be it. Okay, these two bolts are out, and these 2 bolts are out. This is loose now. Now you've got these 3 10 millimeter bolts in the front that have to come out. and you gotta make sure that sprocket doesn't turn. Okay, I've taken the bolts out. I've attached this plate with a longer 10mm bolt that's going to hold that sprocket, which will allow the water pump to be removed. Here's the rear view of the timing cover where the water pump actually attaches. And so we have the ever popular unboxing of parts. Here we've got a new, not rebuilt water pump from AutoZone. Not sure if that's the part number or not. From GMB. This does not look like a rebuilt unit, and I'm happy about that. Most importantly, it's got a metal impeller here instead of plastic. O-ring and an O-ring that goes on the back side for the rear of the housing. So this will sit there. And a set of instructions, which again doesn't apply to this vehicle since ours is front wheel drive and it's on the back. This is kind of generic. So you're going to remove these bolts back here in order to get the plate off. This part comes right off. See, this one's got some corrosion going on in here. So this housing just gets transferred right over to the new one, along with the new O-ring seal. If there's any corrosion in here, you want to get it out. You don't want any of that. Going back in the coolant system. Make sure this is fully seated, because these edges here are sharp and they will cut it. And you want to put a little bit of oil on these before you put it to the new mating surface, and make sure that the mating surface on your new pump is free of any debris or anything. Just want to make sure everything's cleaned off. A little bit of oil on your finger will do it. Doesn't have to be a lot. This gasket's got a little nub sticking out right there. Shouldn't be a problem. A little bit of oil back on. Like so, make sure it spins. There's a sleeve here that acts as a guide that you'll have to tap that down with. And when you don't use tools that way. That's fully seated. Now you just put your bolts back in. The ones that came out. Now the bolts, these go back into, will have threads, so you're obviously not going to put a bolt in here because that goes all the way through. Same, that should be it. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts you got to put back. remove the air cleaner. FYI, when you pull the drain plug, coolant's going to come out all over the place. Just make sure you're prepared or have a funnel. Now you're going to have to move your thermostat housing also, which is down there. The largest radiator hose in the top goes right to it and connects to it. So there's, I believe, 3 10mm bolts on the back. Well, let's see. Let's walk over here and look at our example. There's 3 10mm bolts for the thermostat housing. So you just take these out, move this to the side, and then that tube will come out of the back of the water pump. It goes directly across here. Just a coolant transfer tube. Okay, there are 3 bolts for the thermostat housing. These 2 short ones go in the top. This long one goes in the bottom. If you decide to tackle this job yourself, this is going to be your view through most of the repair. As you can see, I've got the cover off the timing cover here to get access to the water pump pulley on the inside. There's 3 10mm bolts. You can barely see one of them. And that's where you put that special tool. So you've also got to get this bolt out here of the cover, and there's one way up there that you might be able to get to a little easier from the top. It's the only 13mm bolt in that area you're seeing there. Not fun. The other 2 bolts are on the back of the water pump. Here's that 13mm bolt. Much easier from the top. Okay, back underneath. In order to get these bolts out, you're going to need a 3/8 inch ratchet with a 10mm socket deep well. That's the only thing that fits in there and allows you to pull the ratchet back out. But just get them loose, take them out by hand. Keeping in mind, you don't want that sprocket to turn on the chain that it's on or fall down into the timing cover. So we got to find a way to keep that from happening. Okay, don't try this at home, folks, but I have all 3 bolts out of the gear that connects to the water pump pulley, and I'm using the plate with a screw through it going into the gear to hold it there. So when I take the water pump off of the back, hopefully it'll stay there. There's a special tool for this and I recommend using it, so don't try this at home. Okay, so the water pump is out. This is the one I just took out of the car. This is the new one that's going back in. Now when you get this part, it's gonna come like this without this plate, which is this plate. I've already taken the plate off of this and the O-ring and transferred it to the new pump. I'm just gonna go ahead and take the screws out of the old one and put it into the new cover, or the cover that I transferred to the new pump rather. Here's a good example of why to use anti-seize. See, some of these bolts look fine, some of them don't. Use your anti-seize in steel bolts going into aluminum threads. Okay, once you've got the water pump in, you're going to have to align the screws in here for the holes rather, for the timing gear and also the holes in the water pump. That's going to be a little difficult to do, so I use this long 10mm bolt and a ratchet on the crank bolt, and I pulled the spark plug so I could turn it easy, and I just use that bolt to pull away the gear just a little bit from the water pump. Then I turn the engine until the holes are lined up. They're lined up now. So I'm going to put 2 of the short bolts in. That'd be these with some Loctite, and then go ahead and put the 3rd one in, tighten them up, put this cover back on, and then I'm pretty much done under here. Then the rest of it is putting the bolts in for the water pump. There's 2 of them, and then there's reattaching the thermostat housing up top. I'm using this magnet to help get these screws in. If you drop one down there, you're going to be in a world of hurt. And that, folks, is where I end this video. Turns out I did drop a screw, a fastener, down into the timing cover well, and means I had to go get it. Couldn't reach it with a magnet, so that means I had to take the crank pulley off, which I discovered this. Somebody installed the crank pulley wrong. It's not supposed to have 2 of these keyways, so somebody put it on in the wrong position where this one wasn't lined up and just cranked it down with an impact wrench when tightening the bolt, and ended up just destroying it. So I had to deal with that issue. And then once I got the timing cover off, I realized there was a broken chain guide laying in the bottom of it, and it turns out it was for the water pump chain. So I stopped the video in the interest of time and replaced this. I put the other crank pulley on from this engine, which is the original engine, and then proceeded to finish the job and got it running. The thing runs fine. It's out on the street, and then just got it done. On to the next project. So if you want to try this at home, I recommend you get some help by somebody if you're not 100% sure that can deal with the issues that I came across. Like, the novice wouldn't know about this. The novice wouldn't know that you got to pull the timing chain cover. You have to make sure you don't drop the bolts in there. So this is a high on the difficulty scale, so I would be very careful before trying this project as a DIY. So don't forget to check out my other videos, hit that subscribe button, and if I can do it, you can't necessarily do it.